Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Captain Luke of Artemis Charters. If you want to book a trip, you message me on Instagram. That's how I do most of my booking messaging, through Instagram. Let's get into it. I had trips out last week, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It was interesting out there. Wednesday, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to start keeping better notes. But Wednesday we had temperatures. We had a temperature drop a couple weeks ago. We were up to 61 degrees in the water. By Wednesday, we were down to 56. So it was definitely slower. You notice that the fish were reacting to that cold snap, and it wasn't a bad night. It wasn't a huge number night, but I think we had something like around 30 fish, maybe high 30s, but in there. We ended up having a flurry at the end of the night. Got a lot of our fish right at the end. Kind of threw the kitchen sink at them. All they wanted was they wanted Kitex and they wanted hookup baits, throwing everything at them, and that was what they were in the mood for. But we saw a huge mass of Sandbass under the boat. That's what we were using to pull them out. Got them up to 4 pounds. And by the way, anybody feel free to comment. I'll answer your comments. And if you're rewatching this when it replays, drop a comment if you wanna. If you got a question for next episode, or a question just to answer in the comments, I'll answer them right away if I can. But all that kind of stuff helps the algorithm. But yeah, so Wednesday we had the 56-degree temperature. By Friday, it had dropped down to 51 degrees. So we had a very large temperature drop, right around 5 degrees. And the fish really shut off. Friday and Saturday, we had 20 fish nights. I think Saturday ended up being an 18 fish night. Very slow. And I actually called my clients for Sunday. I said, hey guys, just so you know, it's been slow. If you want to try to reschedule any night, this can change. They can become acclimated to the water. The last 2 nights they weren't. And the guys said, hey, let's go for it. And I'm glad they did, because it really turned around. We turned it back around, had a 40 fish night. We even had to pull off the water a little early. I had trouble with the remote for my trolling motor, which has been fixed. But I think that had we had that extra hour, we probably would have had at least a 50 fish night. George from Dinks just asked if I change bait according to the temperature. I don't necessarily change bait according to the temperature, but I change what I'm doing. Especially when they've had that cold snap, they're not as active. They really slow down. And it's funny, normally I would say, a lot of like creature baits, a lot of craws, a lot of dead stick. And they didn't necessarily want that, which would have been my go-to. They really wanted us to slow down, but still have movement. Flukes on Texas rigs were big. Oh, I missed that comment. Didn't stay up. The flukes on the Texas rigs were big. We got a lot on those. One of my big go-tos these last 2 weeks has been taking Warbait's neck breaker and then pairing it with a 1/0 or a 2/0 blacktail. Really small hooks, so I could put these small 4-inch 4-inch sudden impact paddle tails and still play them real slow. But with that small hook, it's allowing that slow bait to still have action. And yeah, they've been, sometimes they've been hitting them on the pause, but a lot of times they've been hitting them on the fall or just on the slow mover. What I'll even do is I'll cast it out, put it into gear, and just let it kind of fall in that pendulum arc. And I would get hit on that. And it's falling just fast enough to have a little movement. But yeah, I think a couple weeks ago I was kind of reporting that there was some bio in the water. and we were making moves to deal with the bio and try to find areas with more light where the bioluminescence wouldn't affect us as much. Well, I'm pretty confident this cold snap has killed off all the bio. Haven't seen not even a little hint of it. So that's, even though it made it tough fishing, I think hopefully that'll be good news as far as the season goes. Bio comes in and out, but we avoided a bad bloom with this cold snap. And I think the fish have become acclimated, at least based on the last trip. They seem to have woken up. There was even a point where we were throwing some bigger baits. We had a real flurry right after sundown, and moved into some bigger 5-inch paddle tails. I think someone just wrote the water was brown in MDR. Yeah, there's been a sewage spill. We're getting a little bit of nastiness in the water in Long Beach. Not a lot, but I've heard that MDR area is just gross. So I would avoid picking up a fish and kissing it before you release it in the MDR area, because you're kissing a poop fish. What else do we got? Oh, wanted to let you guys know on that thumbnail, and for those of you who might be watching it, on the thumbnail, there's a picture of a bait called the lifelike eel. I was catching them on these last night. My buddies Greg and Ronnie gave me a bag of these, and I just kind of wanted to give them a shout out because it's a cool thing. They were poured by their buddy Kenny Matthews. He had a company called Lifelike Plastics, and him and his wife were both bait makers, and they both passed away. They had cancer that some people attribute to them making the baits, but it's cool all these years later that his friends still have some of them and passed them on, and he's still catching fish on stuff he made. We had a couple questions. Have you used flat falls at the wall? Yeah, I've used flat falls at the wall. I tend to, as we're casting back towards the wall, if I'm seeing marks under the boat, I'll just drop the flat fall straight down, or maybe cast them out in front of the boat so they catch up with me as the boat drifts towards it. But yeah, I've used Dallins, I've used submissions, I've used Major Craft. They all work real good. I like 20 ounce. You could probably go up to, I mean, you can do whatever you want. You could do as heavy as you really wanted, but I've used, for the most part, 20 gram, and I'll go up to 40 gram. Another question we got today. Do you ever downsize the line if the bite is tough? I'm a firm believer in, at night, you don't need to downsize your line. If the bite's tough and you downsize to 20 pound instead of 40, are you going to get more bites? Maybe. It's possible. It's also possible that you're going to lose a really good fish, and the person who stayed on 40 pound lands the really good fish. But I haven't seen a whole lot of evidence of, oh yeah, I downsized to 15 or 20 pound and then I started killing it. How long do you fish a bait before you change it? I fish the bait till it doesn't work anymore. I'll even tear parts of them off so I can re-rig them. And then I'll come home with just like a whole bag of baits that I've ruined, and I'll get to work on the mend it, fix them up, bring them again on the next trip. If you guys asked a question, by the way, and I missed it, ask it again, because for whatever reason, my comments aren't staying up. Oh, Dinks asked, how do I rig it? I rig it the same way you'd rig a fluke, as far as, I believe he was asking about the eel. What's good to mend baits with? Um, it's called Mend It. Hold on one second. Imagine it just like using super glue, but it stays soft. Do you fish anything like the Tokyo rig to punch through the kelp? I don't personally. I'm sure it would work great. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work great. I'm a big fan of the Texas rig. I feel like the Tokyo rig's going to do what the Texas rig does, but the Texas rig has that sliding weight. I get a couple added benefits that I feel the Tokyo rig doesn't have. As far as I've got the glass bead, so I've got a little noise where the weight and the bead are clinking together. Um, Also, sometimes as your weight's falling, it'll separate and the bait will flow a little freer. I just think there's cool stuff to the Texas rig where, like I said, I don't see why the Tokyo rig wouldn't work. I would just rather have the advantages of the Texas rig, which is also why I don't pin the weight on the Texas rig. I want it flying free. You throw any top water baits in the slosh. So in the slosh is where the waves are breaking against the rocks. And I've never tried any top water baits. I'm sure it could work. I haven't seen a lot of stuff going on to make me feel that top water would be the right call. I'm not saying it wouldn't work because calicos are wild fish, but if I've got a lot of wash and I think the fish are in there, I'm usually going with the paddle tail, or what I also like is the bluegill from Sudden Impact. I've done really good throwing bluegill into the wash. How do you determine what size weight you throw at the wall? I usually determine it by the speed of the drift. When we're going faster, I'll move as heavy as 1 ounce. I usually don't go over 1 ounce, but we got to really slow down for us to feel half ounce. And sometimes it does slow down, and half ounce is the right call because it's going to drop a little slower and you're more likely to get bit. How far is the horseshoe kelp from the wall? It's not far at all. The horseshoe kelp is a big section. So the horseshoe kelp itself is very large. It's not like, oh look, there's the horseshoe kelp on a map. Let's just say like if this area were the map right here, the horseshoe kelp, runs this whole section. So I would say it's been a while since I ran out to the horseshoe, but I don't think it's longer than a 10 or 15-minute run to get to it. But there's a lot of it. So which section of the horseshoe are you going to be working, etc.? One of the things I wanted to bring up, and this is just kind of the list that I text to people who are coming out on charters, what to bring. If you're coming out, on my charter, or if you're going to go hit the wall yourself, I like to have 40-pound leader. There's not a lot of situations where I'm going, oh man, if only I had something lighter. In fact, I don't think that's ever happened where I've really wished I had something lighter. Mostly 3/4 ounce heads. I'll have a couple of 1 ounce, half ounce, and even some quarter. Most likely, I won't use any of them other than the 3/4. But it's good to have some. Good example is this week. This week, the wall just wasn't biting on on Friday and Saturday. Wall wasn't biting, so we moved in. We fished some of the inner harbor walls, and you don't have nearly the current you have on the outside. But what we did have is we had warmer temperatures in there, a couple degrees warmer. It seemed to make a difference on those first couple days. And moving down to half ounce and 1/4 ounce was helpful. I also tell people bring baits from 3 to 5 inches, paddle tails, craws, flukes. And it's not a bad idea to have 2 or 3 quarter-ounce dark sleepers on board. You may not use them, but when they get on a dark sleeper bite, they'll go ham for them. And you might go through 3 or 4 of them in a night. Don't forget Celsius. Yeah, I like to have some Celsius on board. Also, food, second sweater, second jacket. Last couple weeks, I've just been wearing one jacket. And Saturday, it got cold. I had to put the second jacket on. I haven't done that in a while. But, you know, I'd rather everyone has a second jacket and they're able to get warm when they need to and not be so worried about it taking up the room. But yeah, I think those were all the questions that were asked. Definitely, definitely was a weird week. We were getting some sculpin mixed in, but the sculpin weren't so thick that they were pushing the bass off. Sometimes you'll get the sculpin and they're really thick, and you just can't find the bass. That wasn't necessarily the case. We went and checked some of the areas where the barracuda had been the previous week. If you hadn't watched last week's video, we got into a pretty good barracuda bite. One night we had over 40 barracuda in an hour. The next night, in about the same amount of time, we got 20 barracuda, mostly on jerk baits. Pretty fun fishing at midnight to 1 in the morning, catching barracuda on jerk baits. But we went searching for them, and we didn't find them. But in the area they were at, there was a huge mass of sandbass, and I've never seen a mass of bass. I've seen masses of bait, but a mass of bass on my screen. If you were looking, like, if this is the monitor right here, the bottom of it just looked like a wave made out of bass shapes. It was really cool to look at. I should have taken a screenshot. But we know they were sand bass because we were pulling nothing but sand bass out of there. But they were right where the barracuda were. And so I don't know if the temperature changed, barracuda moved out, sand bass moved in, or if maybe the sand bass moved in that pushed the barracuda out. I'm not really sure how that works, but I did notice it was literally the same spot. Could have been a coincidence too. Coincidences happen. But yeah, this last week, the name of the game was just changing spots. Change spots a lot. A lot of nights I'll set on the drift, and we'll never really move. We'll stay on that drift because you don't want to leave fish to find fish. And we know there's fish on that drift. But yeah, we moved around until we found them. And a lot of nights, we double our fish count in a 30-minute window, 40-minute window. You'd be plucking one every 20 minutes, every 30 minutes. And then you'd get this 30 to 40-minute window where you just got another 12 to 15 fish. So when those windows happened, capitalizing on it was important. Like, if one of the guys broke off and started to retie, I tell them, they don't retie, just grab one of my other rods, throw that, because we don't want to take the time to retie during that small window. Even you get in that window where the bite gets hot, you break off, don't even tie on a new leader, just go straight to your braid. That's my, at least my opinion on that, because time is so crucial in those circumstances. And let that bite fizzle out and then retie your leader. But sometimes it's more important to get back into the bite than to be properly set up. And I don't say that often. I'm a big proponent of 40-pound leader, the abrasion resistance, et cetera, et cetera. But when that bite happens, do what you have to do to stay in the bite. If there's any other questions, I'll answer them real quick, but we're coming up on the end of this. I'll wait a quick minute to see what you guys say. Or once I see people start logging off. All right, guys. Well, that's going to be the end of this one. If you're interested in booking a trip, hit me up on Instagram. And tomorrow we're going to have We have our live with Daniel, Dolan Bates, and El Charlie. It was good seeing you. Thank you for coming by. Great advice. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys watching. I believe Bass Raider is our guest. I don't hold me to it. I should have written it down, but I believe Bass Raider is our guest tomorrow. We're going to be on at 6. And for everyone who's stuck along this far, thanks for watching.